It's a new product video for the 6-11338 Chicago and Alton Limited Legacy Scale 462 Pacific, cab number 657. We also have, under product number 6-11334, the Southern Railroad Crescent Limited Legacy Scale 462 Pacific, cab number 1393. And under product number 6-11335, the Jersey Central Blue Comet Legacy Scale 462 Pacific, cab number 832. When you open the locomotive, you will receive the locomotive in the tender, the instruction manual for loading the engine memory module, the instruction manual for the locomotive, the nut driver for removing the side rod screws so that you can replace traction tires when necessary, the smoke fluid pipette for adding the correct amount of smoke fluid to both the whistle smoke and the main stack smoke, 2 replacement traction tires, a dummy O-gauge coupler which can replace the scale coupler on the pilot to facilitate multiple unit consist with other legacy locomotives, and the engine memory module specific to the road name and road number of this model. These Scale Pacifics with Legacy feature operating class lamps on the boiler front, operating headlight, main stack smoke, auxiliary whistle smoke, a cab interior lamp which is only illuminated when the locomotive sits at idle. Once the locomotive begins moving, that cab light turns off. A new lower profile IR tether on the locomotive drawbar, operating class lamps on the rear, marker lamps on the rear of the tender, and finally a operating coil coupler on the back of the tender. This locomotive features legacy control with legacy rail sounds. These are available at your dealer now. The switches on the Chicago and Alton are located underneath the cab. The position of these switches are the main stack, on in the SMK position, and off in the no SMK position. The auxiliary smoke, which is your whistle steam, SMK is on, no SMK is off. The program run switch, run to operate the locomotive, program to assign a new locomotive ID number to the engine with either TMCC1 or Legacy. In conventional mode, program, or the program position, is used as the directional switch lockout. So if you want the engine to run in one direction at all times in conventional mode, you'd place the switch in program. Finally, the last switch is the Odyssey 2 on-off switch. In the ODY position, Odyssey 2 is enabled. In the no ODY position, Odyssey 2 is disabled. The master volume control for the sound system is located underneath the water hatch on the rear tender deck. By opening up the hatch, you can expose the thumb wheel that increases or decreases the overall volume of the train. You can leave this setting at maximum and control the volume manually using either the cab 1 or the cab 2 remote. The Alton Limited is equipped with 2 smoke units. One located underneath the main stack, which is where the fluid goes in, and the second one located just forward of the whistle. The fluid for the smoking whistle is added here underneath the rear steam dome cover through this hole. It's important to note that you want to lubricate this rubber O-ring on this steam dome cover to help lubricate it and prevent it from popping out of its position. Just a small dab of smoke fluid is all that's required. Before we put the locomotive on the track, we want to always make sure that we do a little preventive maintenance. To do this, we're simply going to use some oil from the Lionel lubrication and maintenance kit that we've put into a needle applicator bottle. What we want to do is we want to put some oil, just a real light drop, on the axle for the collectors. And work that in with your finger. We also want to make sure that we put some oil on the axles where they go through the bearings in the frame. It's a very important step. It'll help you eliminate any possible squeaks that you can have when you get the locomotive running, and it's just good preventive maintenance. So you want to do that to all three of the axles on both sides. You want to also put a light drop of oil on the side rod screws, and then also on the eccentric crank where it goes through the eccentric sleeve and around the main rod spacer and the main rod. You want to do that for both sides. You can also put a drop of oil on the pilot truck, on the axle where it goes through the metal frame of the pilot. Work that in. All these legacy locomotives have a non-locking gearbox. You can roll these over while it's sitting on the bench. Work that oil in. Well, make sure you lubricate both sides, both the axles and the side rods and the eccentric crank. Even though the tender has plastic bearings for the axles, you want to still put a small drop of oil on the end of the axle where it inserts into the bearing, and then also right by the ground strap. And this will prevent any squealing from occurring when you're running the locomotive. The gearboxes are lubricated from the factory, so there's really no need to take the engine apart to lubricate the gearbox. You also want to perform the same steps on the tender. The important places to oil are the axle for the collector, right at the roller. Just a small drop of oil on each axle for the collector, and work that in. And then you want to put a small drop of oil on the ends of the axles where they insert into the bronze bearings in the side frame of the tender trucks, and roll that in. Again, you want to do the same for both sides of the truck, front and rear. Lubricate those. Some of the coil couplers that we've been getting recently on these models are a little bit stubborn. You'll fire the coupler. We're actually using DC current to fire the couplers now, so they fire much quieter than they did with TMCC1. However, sometimes the knuckle doesn't open all the way. Just a quick puff of some dry graphite lubricant once the coupler's open, right into the opening in the coupler itself, in the throat of the coupler, will really improve that operation. So if that happens to plague you on your locomotive, just a small puff of dry lubricant into the throat of the coupler, it'll solve your problem. Knuckle will work much more reliably. Before we get our Chicago and Alton locomotive running, we need to first tell it what its engine ID number is going to be. Using our numbering convention of the last two digits of the cab number, the Chicago and Alton Pacific's road number is 657. So we're going to use engine 57 as the engine address. So on our cab 2, we're going to take engine 57. We're going to take the orange memory module out of the box, and we're going to insert it in the top of the cab with the silver circle L facing up. We're going to press the info key in the upper right hand corner, and we're going to press the button underneath load. This will tell us that the module is inserted. It says Chicago and Alton 11338 Pacific, number 657, load engine data, yes or no. We're going to press the button under yes. It tells us that the engine data is loaded. Remove module to continue. So we take the module out of the top of the remote. What this has done for us is for engine 57, it's already assigned the name and the road number. We press the scroll button in the upper left hand corner. It's set our type to steam. Pressing scroll again, it's set our control to Lionel Legacy. This means that the legacy base will broadcast a 9-bit command signal to the locomotive, and the locomotive will in turn use a 9-bit serial data internally so you can access all of the legacy features. If you're operating with a cab 1, your TMCC1 base is only going to broadcast 8-bit data. Therefore, the internal serial data of the locomotive is going to be 8-bit. And you'll only obtain TMCC1 features, not quillable whistle, not railroad speed steps, only 32 speed steps, etc., etc. In order to get all the legacy features, you need to make sure your control is set to Lionel Legacy, which is what the module does for you. Finally, we press the scroll button again, and it set our sounds up to legacy rail sounds. To exit this menu, we press Info in the upper right hand corner. The road number displays momentarily, and scrolling across the top it says Chicago and Alton Pacific. Again, if we press Engine 57, cab number displays momentarily. Now we're ready to operate. To change the icons on the touchpad, if you look at the touchpad here, we actually have the number signs on here, but under the Engine 57 screenshot or touchpad icons, we have the cab light on and off, we have the speed limit, we have the shutdown sounds or no sounds, and the power button. To change these icons, we press the aux 1 key. Now the icons on the touchpad change again. These icons represent volume up, crew talk, steam let off, volume down. The black circle is shutdown. If we turn the red knob and the locomotive begins moving, that icon changes to a black triangle, which is emergency stop when the locomotive is moving. Stopping the locomotive will bring it back to a black circle. We have steam blowdown, tower comm, smoke off, smoke on. In legacy mode, we have 4 levels of smoke: low, medium, and high. We have marker light on and marker light off. Those are the rear marker lights on the tender. R is for engine reset. And finally, we have Rule 17 lighting on and Rule 17 lighting off. By pressing the speed bar, the icons change yet again. We have our 6 preset railroad speeds. Still have access to tower comm, smoke off, and smoke on. This black bar is an indicator of the labor of the chuffing sound, and that goes up and down based on if you press the effects up or the effects down buttons. Pressing it up shows here you have a labor increase, and that bar graph moves up. Pressing down, the bar graph decreases, and the screen says labor decrease. And finally, the 1 button, or the icon labeled number 1, is roll speed, and that's the very first speed step that the locomotive will obtain when Odyssey 2 is enabled. To exit this screen, we simply press aux 1 or readdress the locomotive again as Engine 57, and the icons change again. Let's get our locomotive programmed and we can run it through its paces. We want to make sure that we add smoke fluid. We recommend using the Lionel Premium Smoke Fluid, which is available under product number 6-37841. It's important to keep in mind that when these smoke units are developed in both the engineering department and then tested in the factory, we always use Lionel Premium Smoke Fluid. It's what Lionel recommends for the peak performance out of this locomotive. To begin, we're going to use the smoke fluid pipette that came in the box. We'll go ahead and fill the pipette up with fluid. And we want to get the fluid to basically 3/4 of the way from the tip of the pipette to the first line on the pipette itself. Insert that pipette all the way down the stack and insert the smoke fluid. A couple puffs of air to make sure that we clear any meniscus that may form inside the stack itself. Also want to remove the small steam dome with the whistle detail. That's the smoke fill hole for the auxiliary smoke unit that supplies smoke to the whistle. Again, we're going to do the same thing with the smoke fluid. About 3/4 of the way to the first line. I'm going to go ahead and insert the pipette all the way down in the hole and insert the smoke fluid. A couple puffs of air again. You want to make sure that you put a small dab of smoke fluid on that rubber O-ring that's on the brass fitting inside that steam dome. That'll help that O-ring from popping out of position. It'll help lubricate it. And that steam dome is held on with a magnet, so once it's reinserted properly, it'll stay in place. Okay, now that we've got smoke fluid added, we want to make sure that we program the locomotive so that it knows what engine number to respond to. As we showed you earlier, the switches on these Pacifics are located underneath the firebox. So we'll have to take the locomotive off the track, and we'll have to place the program run switch in the program position. Placing the locomotive back on the track. We'll go ahead and apply track power. Using our cab 2 remote, we're going to press engine 32 because that's what we told the locomotive it would be. And we're going to press the set button. The whistle blow verifies that it took the command. So go ahead and turn the track power off. Remove the locomotive from the track. Place the program run switch back in the run position. We want to also check and make sure that our switches are in the ODY position, and both the auxiliary and the main stack are in the SMK position. This way we will know for certain that Odyssey is enabled and that both smoke units are on. Okay, got the engine back on the track. Go ahead and turn the, make sure we align our tether here. Turn the track power back on. The locomotive, no lights come on, no sounds come on, it's waiting for a command. So what we're going to do on our cab is press engine 32, and we're going to use the icon in the lower left hand corner of the touchpad. I'm going to press and hold it. You'll hear the dialogue that occurs before the sounds kick on. It goes like this.
Dispatcher here, do you copy? Over. I read you, over. Please start up and stand by. Roger that. Ready to move. Out.
So now our sound system has come up. All of our lights have come on. We'll go ahead and turn our smoke unit on. We're going to press the straight arrow key and the smoke icon on the touchpad 3 times to get the smoke high. As you can see, it takes a few seconds for the main stack to start smoking. We want to make sure that the whistle smoke is working, so I'm going to go ahead and blow the whistle a few times. You can see we have whistle smoke. It's not uncommon for the whistle smoke to take a little bit longer to heat up than this primary stack smoke. That's because when the whistle hasn't been blown for a while, the heating element actually cools off a bit to prevent any charring from occurring inside the smoke unit. Once you trigger the whistle, if you don't see smoke right away, just give it a few seconds, a few more whistle blasts, and the smoke will begin to appear. Go ahead and blow the whistle for you so you can hear all 3 levels of the quillable whistle. As you can see, as you increase the whistle from low, medium to high, the intensity of the smoke coming out of the whistle detail changes as well. Do that one more time. The cab light on our locomotive is currently illuminated. I realize it's hard to see on the video, but it's on. As soon as the locomotive begins moving, that cab light will turn off. I'll go ahead and get the engine running. The smoke unit puffs in sync with the chuffing sound coming out of the tender. I can turn the marker lamps on the back of my tender on and off using the icons in the lower left hand corner of my touchpad. Turn them off, and there's again an icon to turn them back on. Go ahead and run the engine a little bit faster for you. Single shot bell, and then go ahead and turn the bell on. Turn the bell off. Go ahead and play the tower comm.
Dispatcher here, you're lined up. inbound, over. All clear inbound, out.
Crew talk.
Dispatcher, are we clear through the junction? Over. Affirmative, you're all clear ahead, over. Yes, sir. Making good time, out.
As we mentioned when we loaded the engine memory module, we press the speed bar on the effects up and down button. I'm going to go ahead and press the effects up to increase the labor of the chuff, and you can hear the change in the intensity of the chuffing. That's the labor at the top. I'm going to go ahead and bring it down so you can hear the decrease in the labor. And that's the lowest setting for labor decrease. So I'm going to go ahead and return it back to about Midland. And go ahead and stop the locomotive. Okay, this locomotive is also equipped with sequence control. To activate sequence control, I simply press and hold the aux1 or the straight arrow key for 3 seconds or longer. I'll get 2 quick rings of the bell and a quick toot of the whistle to tell me that we've entered sequence mode. Start that now. The locomotive is now in sequence mode. What this is a pre-recorded set of dialogues that occur based on throttle response. So as I go to speed step 1, the locomotive will actually not start moving.
Dispatcher, we got your signal. I'm green. Over. Copy that. Out.
So now I'm going to go ahead and go to speed step 2, and the locomotive will actually start moving.
Dispatcher, we're moving. Over. Acknowledge. Out.
The bell will stay on until I reach speed step 24. I can, of course, turn this bell off manually if I choose, but I'll just go ahead and run the engine a little bit quicker, and we'll get up to speed step 24. Get rid of this bell. So now I'm at speed step 24, the bell is turned off. As I make any dramatic increase or decrease in speeds, there will be a dialogue that follows it. So let's go ahead and make this engine really roar down the tracks. And let's go ahead and slow it down now.
I'm at slow speed. Out.
As we run through sequence control, the longer you run the locomotive, the more dialogue activity you'll get. Anytime you make a sudden increase or decrease in speed, it will in turn trigger a dialogue. The locomotive will randomly give off a grade crossing whistle blast, which is 2 longs, a short and a long. A whole series of stuff the longer that you run the locomotive and at different speeds. Now as we slow the engine down and we get below speed step 24, so speed step 23 all the way to stop, the bell will turn on and stay on until the locomotive has come to a stop. And we'll go ahead and do that now. So now the locomotive is stopped.
Dispatcher, we're at a complete stop. I'll let you know when we're moving. Out.
We'll have to thank the engineer for confirming that. To exit sequence control, we simply press the aux1 or straight arrow key, and then we press the R icon on the touchpad. The whistle tells us that we've left sequence mode. We can go ahead and play a dialogue to fill the coal pile in the tender, To do that, we press and hold the R button on the touchpad. As long as we hold it, we'll continue to put coal in the tender. We let off, you'll get a quick dialogue.
My coal's full. Over. Copy that. Out.
We can also put water in the tender as well, and that's accomplished by pressing the aux1 or straight arrow key, and then what would normally be the number 3 position on the touchpad, and press and hold. Go ahead and let off that now.
My water's full. Over. Acknowledged. Out.
Go ahead and fire the rear coupler by pressing the R coupler button. Get the coupler sound out of the tender, and the coil coupler opens up. These locomotives are now available at your dealer. Oh, let me also show you this, the emergency stop. Let me get the locomotive running. As we mentioned earlier, when you turn the red thumb wheel, the icon in the number 5 position, that is normally a black circle, changes to a black triangle. So let's go ahead and get that moving now. And I'm going to go ahead and hit that black triangle.
This is the dispatcher. The emergency stop. Come to a full stop. Emergency stop. Acknowledged.
So now we're going to go ahead and slow the train down and stop it.
Dispatcher, we stopped. We're all in one piece. Over. Good work. Out.
Okay, now that the locomotive is stopped, that icon has changed back into a solid black circle. So we're going to go ahead and press that icon to go through the shutdown sequence.
Going to sign the register book. Out.
You'll notice that when you go through the shutdown procedure, your marker lamps on the back of the tender turn off, the headlight turns off, and the class lamps turn off, as does the cab light interior, or the cab interior lamp rather. And they'll all stay off until you start the locomotive back up again. And to start the engine up again, simply press engine 32 on your remote and press that button in the lower left hand corner of the touchpad.
Dispatcher here. New copy. Over. I read you. Over. Please start her up and stand by for track orders. Roger that. Ready to move. Out.
As we mentioned earlier, these locomotives these 462 Pacifics are available in Southern Crescent, Chicago and Alton Limited, and the Central New Jersey Blue Comet. These are at your dealers now. We hope you enjoy them.